If you're a beginner in Blender and are looking for some help creating basic animations that will show off your work on social media, then you're in the right place. My name is Josh Bartels with 3 Division, and in the next few minutes, we are going to create some quick animations that will highlight your work. So let's take this pizza from one of our previous tutorials and see what we can do with it. Let's go. So I've done a couple of things to my pizza here since the last time that we saw it. I first of all took it and put all of the pieces into a collection called pizza. I separated the pepperonis into their own collection over here, and I have now cheese, dough, and sauce labeled and ready to go. I also created this pizza paddle out of just a basic plane that I shaped into this format and then kind of edited and made into a nice looking paddle, and then added subdivision surface and this shading right here. So if you want to copy it, you can copy it right there for a basic stylized wood material. And then I lit the scene. Now up here in my lights collection, I have a few different things going on. First of all, I have a sun that is just providing some nice overall fill light. The shadow is not set to anything strong. It's actually got a pretty broad angle. If I select it, we'll see exactly what it is. It's at 68.7 degrees. I'm going to turn off the sun though, and then turn on these area lights, and you can see that these lights are giving a really nice shaped light look to the pizza. So we've got the sun for fill, and then those lights to give it kind of some highlights and pops of light here on the top of the pizza. Now, I also added a stainless steel procedural type texture here to the surface. So it's almost as if this pizza is sitting on a stainless steel tabletop. And this is going to be perfect for our animation, because what we want to see happen is this pizza paddle move in from back here, scoop up the pizza, pick it up off the table, give it a little bit of a toss, and then take it out of the scene. And so we're going to create this looping animation here with our Blender file, but we need to do a couple of things to get things ready to go for this animation. And primarily what we need to do is change the aspect ratio and position of the camera. So to start with the aspect ratio, let's move over here to our render output properties in this window. And we're going to change from a 1920 by 1080. If you click and drag over both of them, then we're going to go 1920 by 1920 and have the resolution set here to 100%. Of course, if you wanted to cut that in half, you could with 50%. And then you've got a lower res render that takes a little bit less time to get out there. Now we've got this camera set up. If I go to my camera view, you can see we're pointing at the pizza here, but I actually want the camera to be somewhere up around in here, maybe looking down on the pizza. I'm going to add a camera target. So I'm going to hit Shift and A and select an empty. So let's hit plane axis, and then you can see I've actually added that to my pizza collection. I'm going to move it to the camera collection though. So let's hit cam target and type that in, and then I'm going to click and drag this camera target up here into my cameras collection. Now with the camera selected, I'm going to go to my object constraints panel over here, and we're going to add a track 2 constraint. Now this gives us the option to choose the target, and that's what we want to use this cam target for. So I'm going to type in cam, and there it is, cam target. And now what that does, if I drag out over here in the top left, click and drag to get a new window, and I hit 0 on the keyboard, I'm going to change this one to rendered so that we can see what that looks like. And then I begin grabbing and moving this camera around. It's always going to be looking at that target, no matter where I am in the scene. And this is great for us finding a new position for the camera and kind of a new angle. So I'm going to hit GZ, we're going to move it up a little bit. Let's kind of get a camera angle that's something like that. I think that's not too bad at all. Maybe a little bit lower. Yeah, I'm going to rotate it around. Let's see, I'm going to hit period to rotate around my 3D cursor. Kind of rotate up this way. Yeah, I like that. That framing looks pretty good. Now, to begin, what we're going to do is grab this paddle, and I'm just going to move it out of the way by sliding it backwards. We're going to park it back here because that's where it's going to come in from. And then we're going to add another empty. This empty is going to be a sphere empty, so Shift and A, select sphere. This sphere totally encapsulates our pizza. I'm going to double click on this sphere and call this pizza control. And now it's ready for us to parent the pizza objects to it. So I'm going to right click on my pizza collection, select objects, and then shift and select my pizza control to make sure it's the active object, and hit Control P on my keyboard and set parent to object. Now with all of the pizza collection parented to this sphere, I can now grab that one sphere and move the entire pizza around. This is going to be incredibly helpful as we animate the entire pizza. So let's now move to the side view so that we can see where this sits in relation to everything else. I'm going to change to wireframe view so that I can be sure to see my ground plane down here. And then I'm going to start on frame 1 down here in the timeline by grabbing this and just moving it up on the Z axis, somewhere up above the camera position. And then I'm going to hit I on my keyboard to set a keyframe. A keyframe is a record of position, rotation, or scale data on our mesh, or in this case, on our empty. And it says at this frame in the timeline, in the animation, that is where this object is going to be. So I'm going to actually grab this though, and we're going to move this one down to frame number 5. The reason that we are going to need to do that is because of this little reflection down here on the bottom part of our animation. If we want this to be loopable, we don't want this just to snap in. We want it to be animated in. So let's hit G on the keyboard, making sure that we're here on the first frame. I'm going to hit G for my shortcut to grab, hit Y, and we're going to move it up above the camera so that it's out of the reflective range. And then I'm going to hit I on the keyboard so that the first thing that happens when we push the space bar to play is that the pizza moves into place here on the top of the scene. Now let's bump forward, maybe, let's see, 20 frame to frame number 20, so in 15 frames, G, Z again, and this time we're going to drop it right down here on top of the surface of this table, and I'm going to hit I on the keyboard to set another keyframe. So let's take a look at how this works. Play it, and there we go. It lands in the scene. I'm going to switch to solid view so that we can see it in a little more clear relief. Now, this is good, except this is not how a pizza falls. Because if a pizza were to fall on this table, it wouldn't slowly fall into place there at the end. Instead, it would be at one constant speed and then would slam onto the table and maybe bounce up just a little bit. In order to adjust this timing, we're going to switch to what's called the graph editor. So go up here to the window selection and select graph editor. Right now you can't see any graph because this is in the way. You can hit N to hide that menu, and then you can see that we have a graph with a few lines here showing up on our screen. Now, the reason that we have a blue line, the blue line denotes movement along the Z-axis, and the green line denotes movement along the Y-axis. Now, I'm going to turn off the Y location and everything else except the Z location. And so that we can see this is a representation, a graph representation of the movement of this pizza from the position of 4 meters high down to a position of just below 0 meters. Now, this little curve here is what gives us that slow down of the speed as it falls, which isn't how we want it to work at all. Instead, we want this to bend straight down like this and just slam onto the table. Okay, so boom, that's now what it does. It maybe isn't even fast enough. We might want to move it forward just a little bit so it lands on the table here. Let's go back to our camera view so that we can see how it's playing to the camera. Maybe even more. We're maybe not high enough to make it fall right because we want it to act like gravity is really acting on it. We don't want it to look fake in that sense. So boom, it lands. But then let's create another keyframe. Let's go G here. Let's duplicate that one. And right here, we're going to grab this pizza and go GZ and pop it up just a little bit. Hit I on the keyboard, and now we've got this keyframe where bam, bam, bam. Now you can see that a couple of things are happening here. One of them is that this keyframe now has this long curve associated with it, which means it's not just going to pop right up. It's going to actually pop and go through the floor. And I should have played that for you so that you could see it, but you get the idea. So let's play this and see what happens. Boom, boom. Now this has some weird curves here too. We're going to take this and I'm going to select that whole thing and scale it down. We want it again to just stop, and we want this one to kind of just be a nice arc. So let's grab it, move it up, or rotate. Actually, let's just delete that one and just let it be a bounce. So if we delete that middle keyframe, I'm going to delete all those keyframes there, then we've got a nice little bounce there. Okay, down and a bounce. Boom. I like it. So you can see the motion, down, hit the floor, bounce up, and then land and stop. Boom, boom. Perfect. Okay, so that gives us just that little bit of dynamic motion as it hits the table. Now, we want the pepperonis to pop in to place after this. So they fall, and then about here, we want the pepperonis to be up in the air and fall right onto the top of the cheese. So I'm going to right-click on my pepperoni objects, select objects, and then at this point, I want to hit G and Z, Actually, let's go ahead and set a keyframe. We want them to be down here. And let's say here at this point, we want them to be up here in the air like this. So let's hit I. So then pizza falls in place, and then pepperonis drop as well. Now let's time this pepperoni drop to be similar to the other one. We want some of the same effects. One, we don't want it to bounce because it's not going to really bounce on the cheese, but we don't want it to just fall and smoothly drop into place. So in order to change that, I'm just going to right click on this one. I'm going to select all these keyframes and do keyframe type, or sorry, interpolation type in linear. Let's see how that looks. Boom. They drop. Bam, right there. But let's have them drop now at different intervals. In order to do that, here's what we're going to need to do. I'm going to move back to this beginning frame where all of the pepperonis are up here in the air. And then individually, I'm just going to grab pepperonis and start moving them. I'm going to scale this one up just a little bit so that the distance is a little bit different between. I'm going to move this one forward just a touch. I'm going to take this one, move it this way. We're just going to grab all of these manually and begin kind of tweaking the values here so that none of them kind of land the same way. And in order to do this, it doesn't take much. It's going to take the work of doing it to every individual one. But even just some basic movements of these keyframes around so that they're not falling at exactly the same time or exactly the same speed is going to make a big difference. So let's kind of move. Let's see. These ones haven't been changed yet. I'm going to grab this one and maybe this one. And let's take those and scale them back so they start falling earlier. Okay. Which ones are still falling at the same rate? All of these ones here. So let's get a couple of these. I'm going to grab them, move them here this direction. Perfect. Okay. Let's see how that's going. And essentially, I'm just going to fast forward through this, but you get the idea. You're going to take these and move every one of them to move at their individual speed. All right, so once that's done, you've got your pizza down on the table. You've got the pepperonis falling on it. Let's see how the timing works out here. And go back to my camera view and let's just turn off the overlay so we can kind of get a feel for it without all the extras. Pepperonis falling down. There we go. Excellent. Now we're set to go. Now here's what we want to have happen for the pizza and the paddle. We want the paddle to come in and we want to see it kind of pop up onto the paddle. So let's take our paddle. I'm going to turn my overlays back on, go to my side view, and then I'm going to go to wireframe so that we make sure we've got this right. Now for this first keyframe, I'm going to move it up just above the table, and then I'm going to rotate it a bit so that it's kind of, getting ready to scoop underneath the pizza. Okay, and then we're going to hit I on the keyboard to set that keyframe. Now let's make sure our timing is right. We've got the pepperoni pizzas landing, and then we want the scoop to start coming in. So I'm going to actually move that back just a touch. And then let's start maybe at frame 45 here with this paddle, and then by frame 65, give it a little under a second, the paddle is going to move forward and be in position to pick up the pizza. Okay, so let's hit I, and boom. Okay, let's check that out on the camera, see how that feels. Go to my solid view, and boom, the pizza, yeah, that's pretty good. I like it. Now, here's what has to happen, because this needs to be picking up the pizza, not intersecting with the pizza. So let's go to our side view, and we're going to need to keyframe our pizza once again. So let's back up here to the point at which the paddle begins to affect it. So right here, I'm going to hit I on my keyboard. Now, it doesn't matter that this is actually intersecting with the paddle, because to the camera, you're not going to be able to see it perfectly. So what we're going to do now is move forward until the paddle is all the way underneath the pizza. And we're going to reposition this. I'm going to rotate it like this and grab it and move it up so that it's up on top of the paddle. Okay, so there we go. Now I'm going to hit I on my keyboard and let's see how this plays. Okay, so boom. It's in the right position, but it doesn't rotate up fast enough. See how right here it's the pizza paddle is starting to intersect with the sauce. We can't have that, so let's go right there. And I'm only going to affect the rotation a little bit and the vertical just enough to make it work, and hit I. So boom, we've got that initial pop of it getting up on top of the pizza paddle, and then it kind of slides up all the way on. There we go. Easy enough. Okay, easy as a pizza pie. There it is. Now, we want something else to happen because we're about to animate this paddle picking up the pizza. In order to attach the pizza to the paddle, as it were, we are going to need to animate the parenting process we used earlier when we parented the entire pizza to this empty. And what we want to do is parent this empty now to the paddle. So what we're going to do is add an object constraint. And this is going to be called the object constraint child of. Okay, so we're going to say this is now the child of what? And in this case, it's going to be the paddle. So we're going to, with that selected, I'm going to move back here to this place where the animation stops. So let's go to frame 68, the frame immediately after everything comes to a halt. I'm going to select the target object as the paddle, and then I'm going to animate the influence. So let's go to, we've got 67, 68, 69. So on 68, or on 69, I'm going to have this be 1. So I'm hovering over that value, hitting I on the keyboard, and then I'm going to back off 1 frame, and then we're going to change this to 0, and then I'm going to hit I while I'm hovering over it, or you can hit the little keyframe here to apply a new keyframe. And now this is parented. So watch what happens. And if it doesn't work right, you can always hit this set inverse while you're on the final keyframe to make sure everything works well. Now if I grab this and move it around, you can see it's got the pizza attached to it, which is exactly what we want to have happen. So now we need to animate this paddle moving. So I'm going to switch to a 3D viewport over here so that I can see the 3D viewport animation as I animate my paddle. So with the paddle now selected, let's go to the side view. Okay, so it slides in here, now it's on there. I'm going to duplicate this keyframe to just give it a second pause, and then we're going to have it start lifting up into the air a little bit. I'm going to hit I on the keyboard. Let's actually rotate it just a touch. Hit I. Okay, now let's see how this plays. So it picks it up. Let's make it a little slower. This is a heavier pizza. We can't have it just happen all at once. Slides in, picks up the pizza. And then with up, let's have it actually go down now. So rotate a little bit more, come down just a touch, and then we're gonna have him toss it in the air, okay? So here we go, down. Oh, that was too fast. Let's actually move this forward, up, and then I tilt it down a little bit. Maybe just, I'm gonna go here and rotate it just a bit more with I. So there's just a little bit more rotation. And then right here, we're gonna start to flip it up. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom out. Let's move back a little bit, and we can adjust the timing here in just a second. The key thing is that we're getting the big moments. It's here, and then it's R like this, and maybe not that high, and then G like this, I. So let's see how that looks. Down. Oh, not nearly high enough. Okay, down, and then we want it to be GZ. I want it to be the kind of thing that looks like it could actually flip the pizza up, and then rotate it down and GZ. Okay, so I. Now here we go. So here's the motion. We're trying to get the motion of the paddle like it throws it up in the air. Okay, I'm going to move out of the camera view so I can kind of see. Because our camera, we're going to have to animate the position of that empty here in just a second too. So he tosses it up, and then boom, it's going to catch the pizza, and then here, let's have the, right after that happens, it's going to rotate along its y-axis. So I'm going to hit R, Y, Y, and kind of rotate it this way and move it to the X just a little bit, like he's about ready to, just a little bit of anticipation before we move to its screen right, its left. Hit I, so here's what happens. Down, he kind of moves out that way, and then this way, R, Y, Y. He's going to tilt it back kind of this way, hit I, up, move, and then G, Y, or X. And then we're going to move it out of camera frame. So let's make sure it's all the way out of frame. Okay, perfect. I'm going to hit I on my keyboard, and now let's see how this whole thing looks. Okay, moves, pulls it out. Now, let's fix our camera position real fast so that we can kind of get a feel for how this looks. In order to do that, I'm going to have to enable selection for my camera, and I'm going to select this empty. And we're just going to animate this to kind of come up with the pizza. So when the pizza starts coming up, right about there, let's hit I on the keyboard. And then let's move up. There's the end of the movement. GZ to move it up and kind of be focused on the paddle. I'm going to hit I. And then it can just kind of stay there. And then we're going to duplicate this keyframe and slide it out until about here where it starts to leave. And then as it starts to leave, we want the camera to return to its original position so that we can be ready for the looping animation. Okay, so up, down, boom. There we go. Now let's smooth out this animation a little bit, because right now as I'm looking at it, it doesn't quite feel right. Now, getting the pizza to move is going to be a big part of that. Because see, this is really fast coming up, and I think I need to move my camera move out. I'll probably make this camera move just a little bit smoother here in a bit. But you can see the pizza comes up, and I think that second toss is almost unnecessary. Or maybe we could have the pizza tossed twice. In fact, let's do that because it looks like the pizza should come off the thing there and come off the thing there. So let's do a couple of double pizza tosses, shall we? So let's select our pizza controller. Okay, now this is going to get fun because we've got to make this look good. So here we go. Up in the air, there's where the pizza should come off, and then it probably should land about here. Okay, so up, the thing stops. Let's hit I. Let's go up here. GZ. Rotate it just a touch. I. Okay, so up, and then it comes off. And then about there, let's have it hit. So GZ, R, GZ. Actually, we can just duplicate that keyframe so that it lands back where it was. We might not want it to land back where it was, but at least we'll get a sense for it here. Okay, up. It comes up, comes off the thing just a little bit. Let's let it hover there for a moment. But it's hovering in relation. It's not unparented here. So it needs to actually also be keyframed up here. When I hit I, up, and boom. So this whole thing is looking a little bit rushed at this point. See, the pizza comes up. I think it comes up too high, maybe. I'm just going to pop it down a little further. And then we'll let it stay in the air, though. Okay, and we just want to move it along the Z-axis. So, up, land. Okay, that feels a lot better. Let's turn off the overlays over here so we can kind of get a better feel for it. Okay, so it's thrown up in the air, and then there's a secondary toss right here. And it should right here then is going to start flying off this thing. So let's hit I to set a keyframe. And then like here, I'm going to be up in the air, GZ. Hit I. Let's make sure it doesn't move because the pizza wouldn't be moving on this axis much on its own. So let's go, the motion of the pizza is up. Yeah, see it has that little forward pop there. I don't want that. So let's GX or GY, GZ, R, I. And then here we want it to move straight down from there. So straight down from there about here. Let's duplicate that and move it over here. No, that's still already duplicated technically. Let's move it over here. GZ, GY, GZ. Basically, we're trying to imagine it falling straight down onto the pizza thing, onto the pizza paddle. I'm going to hit I. Let's see how this works. Oh, that's so high. He throws it way up there. This is not working. He goes way up there. Okay, that's too high. G, Z, Z, Z. Straight Z. Yeah, we're not coming off the plate that much. Maybe like this. That sounds good. And we're just going to kind of pick this line as the line that we stay on. Boom. Hey, that looks good. Hey, that's great. That works really nicely. But we have the same problem we've had the last couple times when the pizza falls, is that this graph, this Z movement, is easing into its fall. We need it to stop abruptly. So in order to change that, we're going to do the graph editor again. So let's move over here, select the graph editor. We've got our pizza still selected. So let's select this one here. And so we've got some Z movement where it goes up. And let's see, where are we now? Is that the second one or is that the first? Okay, there's the first little bit of Z movement. I don't think any of this Z movement should happen. Oh no, that's the Z movement when it gets picked up. Okay, perfect. So this is the first toss right here, this little hump. And so what we want to do is we want this to be a hard stop, right? So we first of all want this to be really tight. And then we want this one here. Except, in fact, if we can change the interpolation mode to linear and then grab this and just move it straight, that's exactly what we want. So boom, because that's where it lands. Okay, and it's going to get tossed again, and this one we actually want to be more linear too. Okay, so it's going to be straight up in the air because it's following the movement. The inertia of the movement of the pizza is actually being picked up from the paddle. So it's kind of like this. It's kind of like the paddle is already in motion. And so there's already Z motion happening, even though you don't see it on this graph because it's parented So the Z motion needs to continue when the pizza lifts off of the paddle. And in order to do that, you're going to have linear motion here, and then smooth motion up here, and then back to linear motion over here. So I'm going to go to interpolation mode this way, flatten this out, and let's see how this looks. So up, down, yep, that looks better. So let's go back to our camera mode. Let's just kind of see how this is feeling. And you can take this and tweak this to your own liking. This is the kind of thing that you can go in and work on. And the great thing about these graph editors is that you can kind of change how long it sits in the air. We could grab this actual thing and move it up, and that's going to change how high it goes. So if we wanted to change the height, it's easy to change it from right here without having to set a new keyframe. So this is pretty cool. We've got this little pop in the air and then another pop. This pop feels fake somehow. What's... The first one looks really good. That second one, I think it's just too tall. Yeah, that's good. We got a nice little double toss and then a slide. Now here's something else I want to add. Okay, when it falls here and he moves to the left just before he goes to the right, I want the pizza to move to the right, almost like it's sliding on the thing. So let's grab it here. I'm going to go G, X, X, X so that it's its local axis. I'm going to hit I. Okay, so we got a little bit of slide. And then when it turns and starts to move there, once it starts to move here, G, X, X again to slide it back the other way. Hit I, but I'm going to grab that and move that slide out a little bit more so that it kind of starts to slide over the course of its motion. And I think this paddle moves off scene way too fast. So let's take this and move that frame out so that it doesn't quite go so quick. Maybe a little quicker. But then that means we need to change how soon we're moving the camera back down, because the camera shouldn't be changing its view too soon then. We want it to kind of match the fact that the pizza's leaving the scene. Yeah, there we go. That feels good. So let's watch the whole animation and see how this whole thing is starting to feel. Okay? So pizza drops, pepperonis fall, pick up. Oh, look, we've got a problem. There's motion in the pizza on the Z between that first frame and the next because we have Bezier keyframes between there. So we'll go back and fix that. A couple of nice tosses, the move out, and the connection. Okay, that's looking good. Now let's go back in here and fix that problem that we just noticed. Let's play it. Right there's the pizza fall. Let's select our sphere. Let's get back over here. Make sure that we're looking at that place. Okay, so here's what we've got. We want to change this one to linear so that it just slams into place. And then we want to change this one to linear too, because there's no ease of motion. The motion of this is carrying it. So I'm going to right click, interpolation, linear, and let's see how this plays now. We just want to make sure there's no motion at all of the pizza up until the paddle picks it up. And that's good. Now let's go to rendered mode. I just want to watch this a little bit in rendered, make sure that we like how it works. Okay, pizza gets picked up, tossed a little bit, and boom, it's out of scene. All right, so there we have it. We have an animation of our pizza, and it's good to go, and it's loopable. So it will just play this endless loop until you're done playing. Now, I'm going to cut off the last few frames here of this animation so that we get back to it pretty quickly. The pizza leaves. We're back in place 136. Looks like where we're going to end it. So I'm going to go to the end frame, type in 136, and there we go. Now the pizza's gone. Another pizza falls. Actually, we could even probably cut it off a little sooner. Let's do 133. Boom, it's gone. Pizza falls. Excellent. Okay, so the animation is done and ready to go. I just want to give you a couple of quick pointers about how to make this look even better here in your 3D scene. So a couple of things that you can do. You've got this cam target here, and you can also use that as your camera's focus target. So I'm going to go up here and select my camera, and I'm going to turn on this option for depth of field. Now right now things just got a little bit blurry. We can change the depth of field to something like 1.4 to give it even more of that blurred edge, but what we're going to do is use this camera target as the focus point, which means it's going to focus here on the pizza, and that will help draw the eye into the pizza itself. Another thing that you can do to kind of help the animation look better as you render it is to go to your render properties and turn on motion blur, and that will enable the whole scene scene to have that natural camera motion blur as it is rendered. This will help your animation look more believable. Another thing that I like to do is go down here to this view transform and change the look from none to this medium high contrast, and it just gives a better look here in the scene. And now you're ready to take your render and create a video of it. If you want to render out this as a video, all you have to do is go down here, select the position in your computer you want to render it, change from PNG to FFmpeg video, switch to H.264 in MP4, and then you'll be set to go for a render. All you have to do is hit Control and F12 or select render animation up here in the top left. And then you'll find that you have a beautiful render ready to share with the world. We dive deeper into all things 3D in our Beginner's Guide to Blender course. So if you're looking for a more systematic way to learn Blender, then check it out on our website. If you found this helpful, then please do us a favor and hit that subscribe button, and then share your finished renders over in our Discord server. We would love to see them.